And the children are. I hear the. I still hear the music. Okay, we're live. Okay. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us for another installment of our podcast. I am broadcasting live from my church, Jesus of Nazareth Free Will Baptist Church. We had a big 80th birthday party for our trust here. So if the children run in, just don't pay them no mind. They're probably going to run past and try to get to the drums. We're fine. So just to begin, I want everybody to just introduce yourself. Tell us how long you have been clean. And then we'll do an icebreaker, and then we'll go into some of the questions that people had. So whoever's ready can introduce yourself.
I'll go first. My new name is Pastor Beverly Ragler. I'm starting up a ministry called Renewed Hope Ministries of Baltimore. Renewed Hope Ministries of Baltimore, Maryland. I am a grateful, restored, and recovered addict of 27 years. I just celebrated 27 years this past April the 27th. And if it had not been for the Lord on my side for these 27 years, surely I would have perished a long time ago. And I'm grateful for my recovery. And recovery is possible. It is possible.
Amen.
Wow. That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was beautiful, Beverly. Hello, everyone. My name's Early Jackson, and I am. I moved back to Philadelphia in 1993. And I was, at the time when I moved back, I was still addicted to cocaine and pills, a lot of drinking. And through, I say through a combined effort of accountability and encounters with God, I was able to be clean January 27th, 1993. And thank God, I mean, from that moment on, I actually got saved and filled with cocaine in my system. So it was amazing to, and I never imagined a life without it. And that was the hard part, growing up in church and being exposed to the move of God. I found it hard to even imagine a life without it, so much so that my sister had to hide the medicine, the Actifed, anything that could be crushed up and snorted, she had to hide it. But in one radical swoop, God just did a great work. But then he set me with a mentor who was kind of walking right. I was gifted him to walk with me the first 2 to 3 years after that to understand what deliverance meant, what being clean meant, and what, just being accountable to somebody meant. And thank God, from that point on, move forward ministry, pastoring, business, and now my wife and I live in Virginia Beach. And it's just an incredible journey. I have the privilege now to give back and work with people who are struggling to come out of addictions.
Amen.
Amen. Mr. Gonzi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gonzia Green, and I'm an associate minister at Jesus of Nazareth Free Will Baptist Church. And before I go any further into my story, I want to say thank you, Reverend Washington. There's your handle. To Lisa, our beloved one, for allowing me to be the first live guest on your podcast. You only first one time. I'm first. I love you early. I'm first. So,
That's right.
You know that.
And you're absolutely right.
I have all respect for you. I am first. So let me have that one. Well, let me start out by telling you, when I'm 68 years old, I was just 68 a couple of days ago.
I'm sorry, brother. Did you say 68?
Because
that's impossible.
68, yeah. I was 15 the first time I ever used hard drugs. Following behind other people at Forest Park High School. My brother was fast. As a matter of fact, my brother was a armed robber. He died in prison. My father wrote numbers. I lived a fast life. I came out of a fast home. And I started using drugs. I grew up in an environment in the 60s where you heard about the war on drugs on every commercial. Most of the movies coming out, people was showing you the bad things about drugs.
Mhm.
We even knew people in our neighborhood with drugs that just totally broke them down. Did that stop me? No. It didn't stop me because, number one, I was curious and immature. And I also like to be around people who seem like they had it going on. That might sound familiar to other people that are listening to the podcast even today. My story may be decades old, but certain things, certain interests into the world of addiction never really change. You want to be a part of something. You want to experience something you never experienced. You want to be able to handle something somebody else may not be able to handle or they're afraid of.
Mhm.
Okay, so that brings a lot of pride into it. Started injecting heroin when I was 15.
Wow.
I was going to Forest Park, and like I said, all the fast girls, and I always did like the fast girls. Okay, all the fast girls would hook school, so I started following behind the fast girls. All the fast girls use heroin, so I followed behind them, and that's really how I got started. And I stuck my head down into that terrible place, and I didn't pull my head. Well, let's put it this way: my head didn't come out of that place until February the 8th, 1991. So we're talking about from 1968 to 1991. I lost count. I used to count how many years I was sober. I think after the 22nd year, I stopped counting because one thing, I was in Christ. And my recovery, the reason why I am who I am today, and I've been through NA, and I had great counselors when I was in the methadone clinic, and the methadone clinic really saved my life. But what really brought me from just being clean to finding some sense of self-worth and purpose came when I found Christ. And let me straighten that out. Jesus ain't never been lost. When I found the ministry of Christ in the church, that's what really imbibed me and gave me the power and the self-confidence not to go down that road ever again. And I say it like that because from February 8th, 1991, until I got saved June 16th, or until I heard the word, June 8th, 1996, I still was shaking because I still knew those same kind of people. If I went to a party, went to a club, I still gravitated to that same part of the room. I just wasn't using it. But I still would have it. I think earlier, you probably know it, Sister Beverly too, those drug dreams you get every once in a while, where you in,
Oh yeah.
it's a nightmare is what it is. But it comes off like a dream. And you wake up looking for bags of drugs. You're looking for stuff on the carpet. You're looking to see where your money is. That's because your mind always gravitates towards something that you did for a long time.
Mhm.
So what saved me was the saving grace of Christ. I can't give it credit to anything else. It's because, like the Bible says, and I don't want to go on and on, but like the Bible says, God says, I knew you and I formed you in the womb. So when I was in NA, I went to all of the meetings and I met the people and I had a good sponsor. Still remember his name, Charles. But there was no godly aspect over and above the term godly power. And that was okay for a while. But let me refer back. My counselors when I was in the methadone program were Christians. And what they would do, because it was illegal to do so, they would sit me in a room and slide a Bible tract across the table. They weren't supposed to talk about Jesus, it's a state of Maryland, but they slid a Bible tract across the table. And it was those Bible tracts that were slid across the table. I read them and I kept them, and they helped me get to another step, just one more step. But the next step was the saving grace of going into Israel Baptist Church, June 8th, 1996. At a funeral for a young guy that had been killed in a drug war that lived 2 doors up the street from me. And the way that his mother reacted at his homegoing, how much joy she had, how much confidence she had from the people that were around her. And I knew then I got a lot out of being around the guys at NA. And I liked hanging out with the women at NA. But it was something about that environment in that sanctuary, in that church, with people who I didn't know, had never seen before, the way that they just accepted the death of someone's son and how she accepted the love and the grace that she was getting from them. I said, this is something special. I like this a lot more than what I thought I knew. So what I did is I came into the church June the 8th of 1996, And a week later, on my 43rd birthday, I practically ran down the aisle, and I was on crutches by the time. I was on crutches early. I was on crutches, Sister Beverly. When I got saved, when they said they opened the doors of church, I almost fell on my own crutches trying to get there. And that's really my story, and I've never looked back.
Amen.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that it's important for people to, when I was picking and thinking about people for this particular topic, I think it's important for people to see that recovery is possible. I think it's important that people see that sobriety can be done. A lot of times, I know personally with me, I've struggled with addiction to prescription pills as well as alcohol. And so a lot of times you can't really imagine your life without this substance. Right. And you become, in a way, the substance that you're ingesting or that you're taking or that you're drinking or whatever the case may be. And a lot of times it's hard to separate the addict from the person you were before any of this happened. So I think it's important that people see that recovery is definitely possible. I didn't really want any newbies. I wanted people that could really say, no, recovery is possible. Like, I've done it for 20 plus years. I've done it for 18 years. I've done it for X amount of time. And it's a real thing. A lot of times within, especially our culture and in Black families, we don't really talk about stuff. We kind of just sweep it under the rug and nobody really knows your story. So I did want to create a platform where you all were more than able to share your story, because a lot of times our stories do parallel one another. We go through different stuff, but it's all the same. And so it's important. And the other aspect of it was that the fact that God can still use you after your addiction. All three of you have the oil of the Lord on your life. All three of you have definitely in some way, shape, or form impacted my life. And I know early we haven't known each other long at all, but that sermon that you preached for our Men and Women's Day literally changed my life. So it was just important for me to create this environment, this platform for us to just talk it out. We're going to have a quick icebreaker. Just going to ask you some random questions, just so people get to know you outside of your addiction. Because a lot of times when you become an addict, sometimes that's all people see is the addict. But there's so much more to us than what happened to us. There's so much more to us than even the choices that we've made. And so I got a couple questions, and then Pastor Curtis should be on. The first question is, what is your greatest childhood accomplishment? I know y'all not 22 like me, because I'm real young. I'm only 22. But if you can just think back, what would you all say was your greatest childhood accomplishment?
I'll jump in and say it was getting yellow belt at the Chuck Norris Karate Studio.
Oh, cool.
When I was like 8 years old. Okay. Now I have since not done karate since then.
I know,
but I definitely remember.
I know my greatest one was I think I was in the 3rd grade. Seriously, I was in the 3rd grade, and I got the lead part in the play. They was doing a play called The Gingerbread Boy, and I was the gingerbread boy. And the thing of it is, we did the whole play in French. Because we were French. Yeah, so not only did I get the lead part, but then we had to do it in French. So that was, I can think back on that time in elementary school in the 3rd grade. Yeah, that was tops for me.
Oui.
Right.
What? In order for me to really initialize this about the greatest accomplishment, I have to give my mother some credit. My mother taught me how to read and write, stick writing, When I went to kindergarten, I could read and write. I was the only person in the room who could do it. And I remember that because it was a sense, I had such a sense of pride back then, because when they passed out the little golden yellow books with the little golden spine on the side, I could read that thing.
Yeah, before my time, I don't know nothing about that.
But I didn't do it. My mother taught me how to read. And she invested that much
awesome.
time in me, and that has affected me even to this day because I write and I read a little bit now. And it's because of the fact that my mother put so much importance on being able to read and understand what you were reading. And then not only that, but to be able to write in a way that people understood where your mind was coming from. So I would have to say that. Because of that, I got to get the announcements in elementary school, Belmont Elementary School. I got to do all of those things that other people wouldn't do. I became the captain of the crossing guards, all that because I could read and write real well. So thank you, Fannie Green.
Amen. Amen.
All right. And what career did you want when you were a child?
I wanted
What
to be a
Journalist.
model. As a
Journalist,
child,
model.
I wanted to be a model. That I did.
What did you want to do?
I wanted to be a Marine. I really did.
Oh, wow.
You know, I had other aspirations like fighter pilot and race car driver, but you never saw any black people doing it. So early on, you know, I got to find out where we can be right now and not wait for somebody to let us in the door.
Right.
So I wanted to be a Marine because it was great Marines and veterans all in our neighborhood. And I loved the uniform. And my father was in the service for during the Philippine campaign in World War II. So he had a lot of pride about what he had done. So I wanted to be a Marine. And I actually got to join the Marines, but I got hurt in training camp. So that dream didn't come to fruition. However, I've always thought that since God had a plan for my life, He knows that if I had stayed in the Corps, I'd have stayed in the Corps. I might even still be there. I'm one of the oldest sergeant majors in the Corps. But God said, no, I want you to be a soldier, but I want you to be a soldier serving somewhere else. So that's how I see things. I take the long view early. I take the long view, Sister Beverly. He knew what he did for me way back then. And going somewhere and fight somebody in Afghanistan, that wasn't what he wanted me to do.
And then the last icebreaker question, and then we are going to have Pastor Curtis come on and share his business. He is a lawyer, a very good one. I call my uncle whenever I get in trouble, and he comes a running. So what was the last movie? No, what is your favorite movie? I'm sorry. Favorite movie?
Grease with John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John.
Yes, I love Grease.
Mine is the Passion
And
of
a
Christ.
quick story with
Go ahead, Early, and then Miss Beverly will come to you.
Oh, I said before my mother passed, like the last 2 to 3 weeks of her life, she was home, and we had a VCR, and we only had about 3 different videotapes. 2 of them were cartoons, and 1 was Grease. So she wanted to watch that every single day, and it became my favorite movie because that was the last kind of moments of time that she and I really spent. I was laying on the bed with her, watching it, you know, making her grits and just keeping her comfortable. And that movie means a lot to me just because it's the last thing that she and I watched together.
Oh,
amen.
Miss Beverly.
I think the most profound one for me that I've always enjoyed is the Passion of Christ. I don't know, that just sort of solidified a lot of things in terms of my understanding and appreciation for who Jesus was and what he was doing for me at that particular time. Because at that particular time, I was just fresh into my recovery. And so that really had a profound effect on me in terms of how I could make his death applicable to what I was going through at that particular moment. So that was one for me.
Yeah, that movie, I think I may have only seen it twice. I think the first time we went as a church, I can't remember. I think we did.
Yeah, we went as a church. Yeah.
Yep. And I could barely get through it. And when I got a little bit older, and I really just kind of wanted to make my relationship with him more personal, I sat by myself. I went and bought the movie, and I literally just sat and cried.
Right.
And that really gave me a greater appreciation for everything that he's done, like everything that he went through, just so that I could be all right. So yeah, that's a hard movie. I want to watch it again, but I'm nervous. So Minister Gonzalez, what's your favorite movie?
I had a favorite movie back then, and I don't really have a favorite movie right now. The Passion of Christ continues to touch me. It's in my collection at home. If I really want to get touched, I'll put that one on. But when I was growing up, I used to spend a lot of time in the library, and I encountered a book called 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. And I wrote about that in my life story on my Facebook page. And real briefly, it's a black and white movie. It's real old, so we ain't going there. But it's about a mission in World War II where it was practically a sacrificial mission where they went on and they didn't know if they were ever going to come back. And it talks about it was written about the pilots that did come back. And then when I got a little older, I found a movie down Enoch Pratt Free Library. This is back when they had it on a disc, and I brought the disc home and copied the disc onto I just kept on and on. But it just was a movie about people banding together to fight evil, going through all of the extraneous things they had to do to be prepared to use the weaponry that they had. And then they had to leave earlier than they were supposed to, and they knew that they wouldn't be able to come back, and nobody dropped out. They flew the mission, they did what they had to do, and most of them came back. And I just kind of equated that. And I got to go into the spiritual side. I kind of equate that with the way that I've lived. My life has been lived in Christ. I've been pressed into some things I didn't know if I was ready for. It turned out, from my estimation, that I was. But in the meantime, it's always pushed me to want to do more and more things, take more and more things on, like sitting at a podcast and talking about one of the darker aspects of my life. It's just a movie that's always pushed me to go forward. Now, my wife and we have a favorite movie called In Harm's Way. It's a John Wayne World War II movie.
I've seen that.
I told you I wanted to be a Marine.
I know that one, yeah.
And,
I know that one.
When my wife and I moved, and we didn't have internet, we didn't have this, and we didn't have that. We had DVDs, and we don't have a few of them. We watched the same DVDs over and over and over.
Yep.
And In Harm's Way was one we could sit up there together and watch this movie over and over and over. It's a love story, it's a war story, it's a story of redemption, it's a story of failure, it's a story of coming back from failure. So I kind of like that movie. It's a black and white movie.
All righty. We're going to transition into letting Pastor Curtis come on. I'm going to take the two of you down, but don't log off. He's only going to be about 10 minutes, and then we'll jump into some of the questions, and then we'll be done for the day. Hey, Pastor Curtis.
Hello, favorite niece. What's going on?
Yes, favorite niece. I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Okay, before you get into it, what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. God,
favorite movie.
A Few Good Men. That's one of my favorites. I have several. It's different genres, but A Few Good Men is I like that one.
Okay.
For the obvious reason, it had to do with law, and it had a different spin on it because it had to do with the military code of justice. There's certain actors that I follow. I follow Denzel, Sidney Poitier, and Al Pacino. But Jack Nicholas, I follow him, and he was in it, and he was superb at it. And they had some heavy hitters in it. And it was provocative, especially the trial work, and I like that. But it was good. Yeah, that's one of my favorite movies. A Few Good Men.
Okay. And so the transition, and that was a great transition, great pick. But to transition into that, I did want to make sure that every month we highlight a black business owner, and you are a lawyer. You are my first point of contact. If something goes wrong, I always call my uncle and he figures it out. So just let the people know what exactly, what legal services you actually offer, and then how they can get in contact with you.
Well, first and foremost, let me go on record by saying you haven't called me that often.
Because I got saved. I gave my life to the Lord, so I haven't had to. But it was got a little close.
I don't want everybody to believe, this is. I get regular phone calls from Lisa because she gets no.
That's not that bad. I mean, that was the day, but not no more.
I mean, I can count on one hand, how many times.
But when I called, it was bad.
Yeah, okay. All right.
It was falling apart. I was like,
I thank God I was in a position to help. But I've been practicing now for 22 years and mostly trial work. So I do criminal, personal injury. Personal injury includes car accidents, workers' compensation, and a lot of civil work. So that's plaintiff's work. So let's say medical malpractice, or somebody wants to sue a company, I handle that. And I also handle a lot of estates and wills, estate planning, trying to be proactive for people before things happen. Many times, especially in the Black community, unfortunately, we wait and we wait and we wait, thinking that somehow some miracle is going to be performed right before we die or even after we die. And unfortunately, we many times leave our families in an upheaval. Since I've been doing this, it never fails to shock my conscience when I see people pass away, and then children that the decedents haven't seen in years come out of the woodwork. Not just children's cousins, family come out of the woodwork because they think money is involved. But I encourage our people to go ahead and be proactive about their estate planning. Get a will, but not only a will. If you have property, you have to address that too, because if you address the property in the will, property is still an entity all on its own.
Right.
So it has to be properly titled. Just because you put it in the will, that means your clear intent's going to be carried out, but they still have to deal with the property and an estate. And what you're doing is you're trying to avoid the money in the estate eaten up by administering your estate. For instance, if you have a house and you put in the will, I want my children to have my house in equal shares. Well, that's fine. But if you don't change the deed to reflect that, they still need to open up an estate, pay probate fees, inheritance tax, and an attorney like myself a lot of money just to go ahead and transfer the property into their names. So I do a lot of estate planning, wills, deeds, trusts, irrevocable trusts, revocable trust. And that just means one, you just can't change until a certain period of time as dictated by the trust. The other one, you can change periodically depending upon what's going on. And I also have some corporate clients, so I handle a lot of business law, starting up corporations, S corps, LLCs, LLPs. I have one of my clients is Simply Elegant Catering. So anytime they would have an issue, they would call me and I would assist. And then I've got a slew of other corporate clients that I handle. So that's what I do. Yeah, that's what I do.
So you are definitely an advocate for people just properly planning before things happen. As far as like those deeds, because it could be a lot messier unplanned, because everybody's in their emotions, everybody's grieving, and it just makes it a big natural disaster. So you recommend that for anybody, regardless of if they don't have much to their name, that's still definitely a recommendation that you have, because even if have questions about that, like what if I don't really have
an apartment and you have $100 in the bank account? If you pass away, somebody has to deal with that. Somebody has to foot the bill. Part of my interview, I ask a whole battery of questions, and it also includes funeral insurance. Some people, they can't be buried. And so you have this body sitting here and family scrambling just to go ahead and bury a loved one. So part of my barrier questions include not only the details to a will, and also how they wish to have a deed drafted with respect to property, but also whether or not they have life insurance. Do they have term? Do they have whole? Do they have funeral insurance? Some people pass away and they may have had stocks or accounts that they just forgot about. Well, guess what? Once they pass away, that financial institution holding that money can't do anything until you open up an estate.
Right.
It could be $100 in a stock brokerage account. They will not do anything as far as distributing that money until you open up an estate, and probably spend more money opening and administering the estate than the actual value of the account. So yeah, I go through a whole battery of questions. So to add to your point, yes, everybody should inquire about estate planning, because it not only administers their property, it not only makes sure that everything is equally distributed, but it also puts things decently and orderly with respect to how everything is to be managed, including but not limited to your funeral.
Right.
So yes, I absolutely encourage everyone, young and old, once you start making money, you need to do some estate planning. I ask about, people get 401ks, they have pensions. Questions need to be asked about who you want to inherit if there is anything to inherit. So yes, I encourage everyone to get estate planning.
Okay. And how do people contact you if they have any of the above, whether it be medical malpractice, whether it be an automobile accident, whether it be criminal, whether it be wills, deeds? Is there a certain process that they go through, or how do they reach out?
No, when they call me, the only other point of contact would be my administrative assistant. So either when they call, they're either going to get me or they're going to get my administrative assistant. They call my office, more likely than not, they'll get my administrative assistant. That's the only other point of contact, and that's that work number, 410-779-1244. 410-779-1244. That is my office number. And I invite clients to also call me on my cell phone, 443-804-5550. Because the role of an attorney should be personal.
That's too many numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry, 443. Oh, I'm good. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute.
You missed the number. So that's why I'm so deliberate with those last 4 numbers. For whatever reason, there you go.
Gotcha. I'm sorry. I'm just a little slow today.
Oh, and you can email me too. Let me give you my email address. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. C. Curtis, ESQ at yahoo.com. Okay, there we go. So, yeah. So I'm very personable. One of the complaints about attorneys over the years is the client can't reach the attorney. And one of the reasons I'm doing this, run my own practice, my own firm, is because I wanted a more personal relationship with the client. I had an opportunity to clerk for 3 different law firms when I was in law school. One was a huge firm, Church and House, and all I did was paperwork. I never got to see the client. The second one was a mid-sized firm, but it was still a lot more paperwork and less opportunity to meet with the client. But then I clerked for a small practice with a man who inevitably became my mentor, Gerald A. Smith. He was instrumental in desegregating all public schools in Prince George's County. And he mentored me, and I got an opportunity to work directly with the client. And I just loved it. I thought I was going to be like many of my other law school friends, going to work at 7 a.m, get off at 11 o'clock, make the 6-digit salary. And I came to realize that I could do the same thing and make the same amount of money by having my own practice.
Right.
But moreover, doing something I enjoy doing, which is working with people. So.
Hey man, well, we definitely do. Well, I appreciate you, but we definitely do appreciate you jumping on today, just to let people know that there is help and support, and there are lawyers who are very personable. I will say I have seen you not just with me, but interact with other clients, and you are definitely very hands-on, as if it's like a family member, and you fight for your client the best that you can. I've seen you live, local, and late breaking in a courtroom, and I've seen where there have been times where folks should probably be locked up, and some way, somehow, maybe it's the hand of God on your life, I don't know, but you always seem to make it work. So if you are in any type of trouble, as criminally, if you've had an automobile accident, any of the above, his contact information is below, and it's also still on the flyer. And then once we are done, I will be posting just his information so that way people can reach out to you and contact you as well. Do you have any type of advice on your way out as far as anything concerning legal assistance or support?
Well, just to piggyback on what you said as far as it being a hand of God on my life, I'm clear that it is definitely the hand of God on my life. There have been times, and I'll be quite honest, I consider myself to be competent in what I do, but some things shock me. I mean, it's one thing, I over-prepare, so trial work is really 95% preparation. The other 5% is what you actually see in court. So many times I prepared 110%. Right. And I'll go in and I'll get a result and I didn't even need 50% of whatever I prepared. So I'm clear. That's God. So I'm clear about that. And I'm grateful for it. And I give God all praises about it. But I would advise anyone watching this with the different facets of law. When we're talking about criminal, one, keep in mind, if ever arrested or faced with law enforcement, less is more. People have a tendency to run their mouths, and less is more. And your silence will never be misconstrued. You're right. So I encourage people to realize, number one, ask for your attorney as quickly as possible. Don't start answering questions. Yes, it is scary. Yes, no one expects you to be an attorney, but to that end, nobody expects you to be an attorney. So just keep your mouth shut and ask for your attorney. And that's it. With criminal matters, also keep in mind that if you have a warrant out for your arrest, you need to recognize your audience. If you actually, it's not just Baltimore City anymore, but I would tell anyone, if there's a warrant out for your arrest, yes, call your attorney. Do not turn yourself in. We file what are called motions to quash. It's just a legal term. All it means is you're asking the court to pull back the warrant, rescind it. You represent to the court, Your Honor, I know you don't know this person, but I'm letting you know he's hired an attorney. He's not a violent individual. He has ties to the community. He's born and raised here in Baltimore. And you just spell out everything that the court needs to know in order for the judge to decide whether or not they say, oh, okay, you know what, Mr. Curtis, you're right. We're going to recall the warrant. So I tell everybody all the time, don't turn yourself in. No, you're making more work for yourself and the attorney. Right. Don't turn yourself in. Call the attorney. The attorney can file a motion to quash. And if it's accepted, they will pull the warrant back and just set it in for a new trial. You save yourself a lot of heartache and pain, because I'm gonna tell you right now, as comfortable as I am doing what I'm doing, I don't like going into the jail even to visit. So I know no one really wants to be arrested.
I don't. I sure don't. I don't want to be arrested.
So less is more. Don't be quick to turn yourself in. Realize whatever the circumstances are, you have rights. You have opportunities. All you need to do is pick up the phone and make a phone call and let us do what we do. So that's with respect to criminal. Personal injury, don't try to do it yourself. And I'm not just saying this for self-gratification. I've had clients call me after trying to handle a personal injury case on their own. And they say, Mr. Curtis, you know, I tried to do this myself, and the insurance company offered me this little bit of money. Well, they offered you that little bit of money because you're not an attorney. And I'm not saying that to be condescending. There are just certain things attorneys know. They know how to communicate. They know what the insurance companies are looking for. They know how to prepare the entire demand package in a way that the insurance company is going to look at it, and their noses are going to be dragged all through the facts and the medical records, and they could say, okay, you know what? I need to put some value to this. And that's what attorneys do. We put value there where you otherwise might not have thought about it. Don't try to do it yourself. And again, I'd love for you to call me, but if you don't call me, call an attorney, even in a car accident. I don't care if it's what you think is minor. People don't realize the way they make cars now, there is a crash protectant under the bumper cover of the car. So when you're hit, it absorbs that impact and it is cracked, you might not see it because the bumper cover covers it. And they may say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. No, it is a big deal. You have to take the bumper cover off to see the damage behind it. And that doesn't take place until you actually open up the case, open up the claim, the attorney gets everything done, pushes it through for the property damage and the bodily injury. So don't try to handle it yourself. And estate matters, we already talked about that. Business law matters, yes, call an attorney because we're already familiar with the forms. We already know what's needed. There are some boilerplate language forms that are with the State Department of Assessment and Taxation. That's where you actually file your entities, your LLCs, and your S corps. But attorneys know how to manipulate the language so it will be tailored to your business. So call an attorney there. And if you have a business, just to make sure you're protected and no one talks to you or handles you or tries to do business to try to manipulate you, sometimes just the very mere notion that there's someone on your side that has your back and fighting in your interest will keep them at bay. So,
the moral of the story is call your attorney. That's the moral of the story. Definitely want to thank you so much.
The man of God, it's a definite plus.
Absolutely. Definitely want to thank you for sharing. Definitely will help a lot of people. Again, I'll post all of Pastor Curtis's information once the podcast is over. If you're in trouble, just call. And he can definitely make sure that you are as taken care of as he possibly can. So thank you, Uncle Chucky. I appreciate you.
Counselor.
Pleasure. Bless you, Reverend. Thank you, wonderful favorite niece. Thank you. It's great seeing you all again. Beverly Ragler, haven't seen you in years. God bless you. It's so great to see you again.
Great to see you too. God bless you, sir.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
I love you.
Love you more.
Peace, my brother.
All right. So we definitely do appreciate that. Just want to dive in because we are a little bit short on time, but there are 3 questions that really repeated itself when people were sending in questions. Everyone that sent in questions were people that were early on struggling with their addiction. And so there are 3 questions that we just want to hit. Want you all to share. Again, be as candid and vague as you choose to be. At what point did you know that your addiction had gotten out of control? Like, what was the moment for you where it was like, I think I might have a problem?
When I was stealing stuff and my sisters had made my nephews the guardians, that when I came over, I was allowed to go to the bathroom and sit in the living room, and that was it.
Wow.
I think I recognized mine when a lot of my I would never do came into play. A lot of the things that I said that I would never do. I would never go out there and steal out of a store. You understand? But that did happen. I would never have Child Protective Services intervene with relationship to my children and how I care for my children. And that was the one that would never happen to me. One was the one that really propelled me and finally pushed me into recovery. So, when a lot of my I would never do started coming into play, and it went from just doing it on the weekend, just funs and giggles. Started on the weekend having funs and giggles, and then you look up and come Monday, you got to do some more. You know what I'm saying? And you pass that off, and then all of a sudden it became Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And by Thursday, you couldn't function unless you had a little something in you. Right. So, and that's how it all started. But, too, Jelena, I know people want to know what made you realize that you had an issue. I don't think it's so much of what made you realize as it is to the root cause. So what made you get started in the beginning, True. And so the root cause is hurt and pain. The root cause for anybody is hurt and pain. So what actually started me, as opposed to me realizing that I had an issue, was pain. I came from a dysfunctional relationship a dysfunctional family. Got into my husband abused me at that time. There was a lot of abuse in a relationship, and the first time I ever used was because of pain. He had beat me up so bad the night before, and I'm battered and I'm bruised. And when he came in, he was using, I wasn't. I was one. I ain't never doing that. Because back
Right.
in the early 70s, for me, I'm not doing that. That's bad. But then when he gave me something, because I was hurting, and immediately it took the hurt away. It took the pain away, not just the physical pain, but the emotional pain as well. You understand? I believe, to be truthful and honest with you, I believe I got hooked right then and there. You understand? Because that's when I honestly began to use to suppress my hurt and suppress my pain. And then the day came that it wasn't suppressing the hurt and it wasn't suppressing the pain. It had expanded, and I was a full-fledged addict by then. You know what I'm saying? So it's you got to get to the root cause
Right.
of why we do what we do, especially when we're doing things that we know is wrong. I knew
Right.
that I was doing something that I knew was detrimental to my overall well-being,
Mhm.
but I did it nevertheless. You know what I'm saying? So for me,
Yeah.
in order for me to get recovery, in order for me to get clean, for the second time around, because there's a relapse in my story as well, I had to get into the root cause. I had to begin to deal with the root cause of
Mhm.
why I was using heroin and cocaine. And I knew it was wrong that I should do this, but what was causing it, And when I
Right.
found out that it was my hurt and my pain that didn't have anything to do with anybody else per se, as it was me being the type of individual that I am, and being a sensitive individual, and my feelings and my emotions run deep, you understand? But it had a lot to do with my physical abuse, but eventually it evolved into a mental issue as well,
Right.
and it created the mental health issues. And so as I was coming along, raising my children, at the time I had 4 sons, I was what you would call a housewife dope fiend. And I'm going to be that real with it. You understand? Where I took care of the children, I took care of the house, I volunteered in the schools, I made sure my home was clean, the children. I was a housewife dope fiend, but I still got high. You
So you were
understand?
completely functional.
I was an intravenous drug user. And
Right.
that's what I did, and that's how I was able to function. And then when I had my special needs son, that just really pushed me further deep into my addiction, because then I'm using it to have to cope and deal with him, because I never received any relief in terms of how to
Support.
nurture and raise a special needs child. You
Right.
understand? When let me be real with you all, that his condition was a direct result as well as me being of me using. You know what I'm saying? Because the whole time I was pregnant with him, especially the first 6 months, I used twice a day, every day. You know what I'm saying? And so I had to deal with the guilt of all of
Mhm.
that too. So I think, as a woman, coming from that perspective, you understand? I think women, you have more female drug addicts that are behind the scenes, that are in their homes, addicted to, whether it's heroin, cocaine, pills, as you were saying, alcohol. You understand what I'm saying? Some alcohol is the worst, I believe, of the addictions, because you have too many people that are alcoholics that are functioning. They go to their jobs. They manage their businesses. They help me, Jesus. They preachers. I'm just putting it
Yep.
out there. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And they steady functioning. You understand what I'm saying? But and they don't want to admit they're the ones that stay in denial the longest. They're the ones that stay in denial the longest. But I just believe that if people get anybody today, the players might have changed, but the game is still the same. But if you get to the root cause of why you do what you do, especially when it's addiction, I believe that's the beginning of making recovery possible for you. You got to get to that root cause.
I agree. Minister Garcia, when did you realize that you had a situation?
Let me touch on the root cause first.
Okay.
Because I agree with you wholeheartedly, Sister Beverly, Pastor Beverly, wholeheartedly. I grew up in an environment where I knew that my mother favored my older brother. And I was young and I didn't understand why. But, parents know their children better than anybody else in the world that will ever know him. And my mother knew when my brother was young, it was something going on in him that just wasn't quite the way it should be. And he was tall, he was handsome, he was strong. All the boys in the neighborhood followed him around. I followed him around. He sent me to go fight somebody, I'll go do it. He sent me to go do something wrong, I'll go do it. I worshiped him. He was everything to me. But I knew that my mother seemingly loved him more than she loved me. And I never got over that. So whenever we would have a conflict in the house, it seemed like my mother took my brother's side, and that would infuriate me. But I'm living in my parents' house. I'm the younger sibling, and I really don't have a lot of voice. I kept it inside. When I started going to school, I was tall, and I lived in practically a gangster family. So I always had nice clothes and nice shoes and had money in my pocket. I mean, who went to junior high school with a $50 bill in their pocket? That's just the way I was. And this is like 1967. So I had money, but I didn't have that confidence. I didn't start having confidence until I started getting high. When I started getting high with the people that were getting high, they seemed like it was just the confident, strongest, easygoing people. They're all dead now. And that's where I got my strength from, that artificial strength, that misrepresentation of what peace is came out of a syringe. And I just kept on going with it. But what made me realize in the later years that I had gone too far was my second drug overdose. The first one I don't even remember. They walked me around somewhere behind a bar or something, stole all my money, took my shoes. I'm serious. That was my first overdose. They just stripped me before somebody came and got me up off the ground. Wow. Thank God it was in the summertime. The second overdose I had a girlfriend. And my girlfriend was hard on me about using drugs. You got to stop. Why are you doing that? It's going to mess up the way you make your teeth fall. I heard all of that stuff. But I had a reason why I was using drugs, because I had a part of me that was missing. And only heroin and cocaine mixed together could fill that up, or at least cover it over for a while. I had a second overdose, and my mother was there. And I think that was the reason why my mother took my name off of everything. And when my mother passed away, I didn't have the house, I didn't get the money, I didn't get anything. And even though I had progressed from that to being clean and sober for years after that, and in church, she never let that go. She never changed the paperwork, just like what Counselor Curtis was just saying. She never changed the paperwork. So when she wanted to, she had early dementia, and she didn't get it done. But the second drug overdose I had should have been the one that woke me up, because my mother was there. And I should have felt shame. But you know what I felt? I felt like it serves you right, because the reason why I'm doing this is because of what you did to me. That's how I felt. Right. I really did. Now, what about ism? I tried to find an excuse for being the weak person that I was. What really turned my head was my girlfriend told me, if you use drugs again, I'll never want to be around you anymore. And I had a pocket full of drugs. She walked out the house. I lived at 1419 North Elamar Street, and my wife worked 5 blocks up the street on North Avenue. I had an overdose. Wow. Somebody made her turn around and mid-walk and come back to the house. She saved my life. I married that woman. She saved my life. That's what woke me up, was the fact that I actually really almost died this time. The first time I don't remember. The second time I don't hardly remember. The third time there was nothing there. All I remember is falling face first on the floor. And when you have had an event like that happen and you're in the drug world, if that doesn't wake you up,
Right.
the next one you might not get up from it. That's how it happened to me. With all of the things that had brought me to the reason why I was using drugs, that didn't do it. The inadequacy I felt of growing up underneath my brother Michael, that didn't do it. My mother's seemingly affection for him over me, that didn't do it. The shame of seeing my mother stand over top of me while I'm getting up off the floor. And that second drug overdose, I was a little messy, okay, with bodily functions, and we're just going from that. But that third one, when my wife was screaming and crying at me and slapping my face and all these things, well, then girlfriend, and I realized that I actually was dead. I was actually gone. Now, I had some inadequacies in life, but I wasn't ready to give this life up yet. I wanted to pad this life with drugs. I wanted to add stuff in this life like a fast life style, but I didn't want to let this life go.
Right.
That was it. February the 8th, 1991, I got on the methadone program. That's it.
Wow. I think for me, and I've shared with you guys before we started. Well, I may have, but I can't expect my viewers to be open and honest. I can't expect my guests to be open and honest. And if I'm not, for me, I realized that I had an issue when I could not function without it. I was more functional with it, very productive, very effective. I preached, I sung, I danced, I did cartwheels, I could do it all. But I couldn't do it without it. And at that point I was like, something is wrong. And then when I attempted to stop using, I had got like the shakes really bad and all that other type of stuff because I didn't know anything about withdrawal. Because again, like within the Black community, people don't share their experiences. So I didn't even have like a point of reference to be like, you know, what do I do? Blah, blah, blah. But that was it for me. I knew that I could not function with it. I would come to church with coffee mugs full of alcohol, or I would have already popped the prescription pills and be completely just gone. Like physically, I was in the building, but mentally and emotionally and even spiritually, I was just so detached that at that point it was like, okay, we got to do something a little different because it could kill you. And I was functional. I was very functional. And a lot of people, some of my old friends would even say, you know, I preferred the intoxicated you. I preferred the high you because you were a different person. You were a lot more fun and all this other type of stuff. And I had to get to a point where I just embraced me, the sober me, and just embrace the fact that I am who I am and I can be more effective without it once, you know, like you said, once you deal with the root issues. And I talk on my podcast a lot, like therapy and God is the only way you make it through anything. And you really do have to just kind of do that trauma work. You have to dig deep. You have to look at, you know, where you went wrong. You got to deal with the little girl inside and all that other type of stuff. So for you all, and I'm only gonna hold you for about 15 more minutes. We definitely have to do a continuation, at least for me, because this is definitely blessing you.
Actually, I'd only allotted, hey Lily, I'd only allotted right at 2. I gotta jump off and prep for my next thing. But thank y'all so much for having me.
I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Let me know when the next one is.
I will. I definitely will. So the next question. See you. So the next question that was sent in was, what was your process for recovery? Did you do AA? Was it prayer? Was it like, how did you maintain your sobriety? Like, what was it for you that kept you clean?
Let me answer that as a female, because you know everybody has their own process. Like I said, let me tell you something, Elder. Let me say this real, okay? It's when you decide that you are sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know, when we all tried to get clean and sober, we was trying to do it for everybody but ourselves.
Right.
But when you decide that you no longer want to do something that you know is destroying your life. For me, it was, you know, I had the methadone program in my story. I had trying to stop on my own in my story, but I had trying to stop for other people in my story. Stopping for the other people led me to the treatment centers.
Right.
And when I went to the treatment centers, what I was able to obtain from them were the tools for recovery, to learn how to use the tools. But even after going into treatment, I did relapse, okay, because of hurt and pain. But I think for me, coming out, I'm gonna go start with the second time around. What I did the second time after my relapse, I had that never would happen into my life, where protective services had to step into my story, okay, because of a family issue at that particular time. And that was one of my nevers. And at that time, you know, I got to think about my children and my family and what have you.
Right.
And so, and then I had a daughter, okay. I had 4 sons prior to that, but now I had a daughter. And I knew I did not want my daughter to go through what I went through. I didn't want her to experience any of that. I didn't want her to grow up like that. And so I knew that in order for that to be achievable, I had to get me right. And so this time I chose to use the tools that I received in recovery, and I chose to do my 90-90. I used the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. I used the rooms of AA, and I also used prayer. And it was actually a prayer where I had to go, and when I was all by myself, children was gone, husband, he was doing him, and wasn't nobody but me and God. And I remember something that my mother said. She said to me, she said, whenever you find your back up against the wall, she said, Beverly, she said, and you've done all that you can do. She said, you stretch your hands. She said, Father, I stretch my hands to thee, for there's no other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, where will I go? And at that particular time, being all alone, coming up off of the methadone program for the second time, I'll never forget it. It was on an Easter Sunday morning. I went down on my knees, and this was in 1993. I went down on my knees, and I remember what my mother said. But she said something to Elder. She said, Beverly, she said, before you pray and ask God for anything, think about what you're going to ask for. And I thought long and hard about that. And it came back, you know, our parents teach us some things. They think we're not listening, you know, but at time we don't, but we really retaining information. And so what I did, I went on my knees that Easter Sunday morning, and I asked God, and this is the truth, I asked God to remove the thirst, the hunger, and the cravings that I had, and that had taken a control over me, and remove that demon called drugs that had been assigned to me, and remove that, and remove, like I said, the thirst and the hunger, and something that I knew was destroying my life. But then when I was thinking about it in terms of what I was asking him to do, I knew that there was going to be a void there. And I asked him to replace it with an intimate personal relationship with him. Replace that void with an intimate and personal relationship with him. And just like that, that's just how it happened. He came into, I'll never forget, in that bedroom, he came and he said, Beverly, he said, those who come to me must come to me in spirit and in truth. I said, okay. He said, Beverly, he said, and keep it real. He said, keep it real. And that meant that I had to be honest with him about me. And he already knew about me. So I had to get honest with me about me. I had to step out of denial into God's grace. And so I celebrated. I said, Lord, if you just give me one whole year clean, just 1 year, I said, I won't go back. And so I celebrated my first year of recovery in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. And it was when I went into my second year, still going into the rooms, going to my home group over there in Cherry Hill, someone came to share that night. And this is what he said that just transformed everything. He said, we come up in the rooms and we're sharing and we're talking about our higher power. He said, but I know my higher power to be God. He said, and if you're constantly coming up into these rooms, chasing these meetings, you understand, and you're switching out one addiction for another, and up in them rooms, it's all kind of stuff. They still get high up in the rooms. They still drink. It's more. Oh Jesus! It's more boring up in the rooms. You understand? Everybody running with everybody. You understand? All up in the rooms of recovery, mind you. And so he said, and if you're not relying and dependent upon your higher power, then you coming up in these rooms don't amount to nothing. And something clicked in me, and I knew the brother was speaking truth, because I knew my higher power to be God. And it was then that I made an earnest decision that I was going to follow and get my recovery through Jesus Christ. That was the only way for me, because I saw too many people relapse. I saw too much stuff going on in the rooms. And this is the truth. After that brother shared that night, and I was into my second, I think maybe about 6 months into my second year, I ceased going to the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. And what I ended up doing at that time, I started church hopping. I just started church hopping, trying to find a church that was conducive to my recovery. And so as my relationship with God was beginning to formulate, and I could hear him for the first time. I could hear him. And he said, no drink. He said, do not drink or drug. Didn't drink or drug, went church hopping. Then finally one day, he spoke to me and said that I was to join Morning Star Baptist Church of Catonsville. And so I was sent there by God. And that's why when I share my story, I tell people I was sent there by God. And when I went there,
I appreciate
it. By that time, I had, church hopping and everything. When I came in, I was coming into 5 years of being clean and sober. And stuff was still getting shaky, tempted. Everybody around me was still doing what they was doing. You know what I'm saying? But I had made a conscious decision. It was just that easy. No, this is how I equated it with. If somebody told you to go rob a bank, would you go rob a bank, or what would you tell them? You tell them, no, you ain't going to rob no bank. It was just that easy. Somebody tell you, come on, use some drugs. If you don't really want to do that, you're not doing that anymore. It's just that somebody tell you jump off a bridge, you're going to go jump off a bridge? No, you ain't going to jump off no bridge. You're going to tell them no. That's how easy it was. And so when I came to Morning Star and I shared with Reverend Devlin at the time, I told him I had celebrated 5 years. And so he immediately, that's what I love about my pastor, he immediately set me up with other recovering addicts, alcoholics and all. And we formulated the TGIF, Thank God I'm Free, recovery ministry. And we built that thing up. We pulled it together. It was 5 of us. And from that point on, I began to work out my recovery through Thank God I'm Free. And then finally, as God was moving and operating in my life, He's let me know that it was more to addictions than just drugs and alcohol. It was more to it. It was video games, chocolate, shopping, stealing. Well, I knew about the gambling. You understand what I'm saying? That addiction was far more than what people thought it was. And so a lot of times people who, any antisocial behavior that separates you from God, you understand what I'm saying, is an addiction. Anything that gets your eye and get your attention, and you put that thing before God is an addiction. You understand what I'm saying? And he started naming all kinds of things. Then he sent me to the mountains in West Virginia to get some information through a group called Celebrate Recovery. And it was when I went to the mountains, I took a group of people from TGIF, and we went up to the mountains in West Virginia, and they had a summit there. It was a summit. And I came back with the new tools, the new way for recovery, you understand, where it would reach a broader degree of individual, where people could actually step out of denial into God's grace. So nobody should be looking down their nose on a drug addict. Nobody should be looking down their nose on an alcoholic, because quiet as it's kept, you got some hurts, some habits, and some hang-ups too that have somehow or another you placed before God. He said we're to have no other gods before him. And we have a tendency to do that. And so I use the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, much prayer, still pray. And above all, I leaned on Jesus Christ, and I trusted in his word. And I followed the 8 principles of Celebrate Recovery that has kept me clean and sober for 27 years. You know, I am recovery, okay? I am a miracle. You understand? This is my ministry. This is what I do. You know, you want to get healed and delivered? It's possible. You understand? It is possible for anybody, but you got to want it. You got to want it. If you don't want it, you're going to stay out there. You're going to keep doing what you're doing. Don't do it for your children. Don't do it for your husband. Don't do it for your significant other. Don't do it for your mama, your papa. Do it for you. Because only what you do for Christ will last. And when you make the decision and surrender, I'm done. That's a wrap. And that demon from hell can lure you back in.
Right.
But you got to do it one day at a time.
Yep.
And you got to let go and let God. And I'm here to tell anybody that's listening today, oh, it's achievable. Yeah, it is. It's achievable. It's possible.
Minister Gonzalez, we definitely gonna have to do a continuation. I'm gonna let you answer this question, and then we'll schedule another one because this has definitely been a blessing. Before he shares, I just want to say how much our stories parallel. It's crazy. Like listening to you, it's like it literally is everything that I've prayed. Literally, God had to take the taste from me. And then there was a point where I would still use, even though the taste was gone. And I would try to be like, well, I'm still going to do it because I'm grown. And it was like, it wasn't the same. It ain't feel the same way. Yeah. So it was just crazy. Minister Garcia, what has helped you? And then we'll close out from there. What has helped you stay sober?
Well, first of all, I commend you, Rev, because everything you said, I've been in the rooms, I've been counseled, I've looked in the mirror and seen my true self, and I've seen and heard God. So I agree with everything that you said, and I can't best that. I can't get any better than that. 5 years clean, but still, my wife is in the room. I was still going around. I can't say it any other kind of way. I was still doing the things I was doing when I was using drugs. It just wasn't using drugs.
Right.
And I'd be around them, and I wouldn't use the drugs. But that was the environment that I felt most comfortable in. The loose lifestyle, so on and so forth. But what kept me clean was when I came to Christ, and I met the men in the church that I was going to at the time, Israel Baptist Church, And these men were with me from like the Bible says, from the 8th day on. They were always on the phone. They were at the door. They came and got me. I was never really alone by myself once I got saved.
Right.
Now, again, I hadn't used any narcotics in years, but that was still in my head.
Right.
If something goes wrong, I know where to go.
Right.
If it hurt real bad, I know what to take.
Mm-hmm.
If she get on my nerves, I know where to go.
Right.
And that's just because it's always there.
Right.
You know why? Because an addiction is always a trap door to somewhere else.
Good God Almighty.
Okay. It's like jumping out of a parachute.
Right.
It's a trap door to somewhere. You don't know where the somewhere else is.
Right.
And the trap doors change because they change location. When you're younger using drugs, yeah, that trap door leads to this, but you may be able to survive that one. But when you get older, and I can speak on that one, you can't go back. Most of the drug overdoses you see in the street these days, with older people in their 40s, they went back.
Right.
Drugs are not the same. Drugs are not the same like they used to be.
No.
Okay. So anyway, but what kept me clean was when I knew that I faced up to the root cause, which was there was an inadequacy in me based on the way I felt my mother didn't feel about me, but not understanding why she did what she did because she's a mother and they know better.
Right.
When I came to the understanding, it was reading the Bible and being around godly people that had not lived perfect lives, that would sit and tell me about certain things that would be so parallel to what I had gone through.
Mm-hmm.
And they were sitting up here in the church, and when they leave the church, they go home. They don't go hang out anywhere. So I started following their lead. And you talk about dreams, and let me make this one real quick because I tell this story all the time. And if it's a lie, it's a good lie. I've got it. I've got it burned in my head. I hadn't been saved, but maybe a month. I had a dream. Okay, and I put as much stock in dreams as you should. I don't overvalue it, and I don't undervalue it.
Mm-hmm.
I had a dream. I was standing on a little small dusty hill, and I had on an old ancient outfit. I had on a robe and a sash, and I could see the dust on my feet. And anybody will tell you I'm a very fastidious person. I don't play dusty, dirty, sticky, greasy. You want to take me away? Put something greasy and sticky around. You will not see me around again. But anyway, and I'm not anal retentive. But anyway, I remember this dream so much that people were walking by the thoroughfare, and I was talking, and nobody was listening to me. Then 1 or 2 people stopped and listened to me, and then 2 or 3 more. But the bulk of the people kept going past me. I did not understand that dream until I started growing in Christ. And I understood that when you become a servant of Christ, you're going to have to tell people things that they should have been hearing a long time ago. Right. They probably did hear. They ignored it then. They might ignore you too. But you can't stop telling.
Right.
We can't stop telling.
Agreed.
Because we're telling you a success formula.
Right.
And there's not too many of them out here.
No.
The success formula is knowing that there is a God and I ain't him. Mm-hmm. The stuff that I do to make me feel good, it ain't going to work for so long, and chances are it's just going to make me feel worse in the long run. Mm-hmm. I've had 3 heart attacks mainly because of stress, living that life, but also because of all of those speedballs I was shooting from 1968 to 1991 and blowing my heart and my veins up back and forth. Mm-hmm. So when I had a heart attack, that was the weakness that I had put in my own body. Wow. You know, and yeah, it's demonic, but we always have to understand something. Until you come to Christ, everything you do is demonic.
Yes.
Everything. Even the good stuff you do, got a demonic twinge on it because you're doing it for yourself.
Right.
Or you're doing it for somebody else. Oh, you did a good job.
Right.
Or, you know, how much can you pay me to do this again? Right. It's like that. But in summation, root cause, I identify the root cause. That hole that I felt that I had, Christ filled that hole. And he keeps filling it and overfilling it to the point where I don't even realize I had one. I've had tracks on my arms for all these years. And when I used to preach early and go talk to guys, I was showing my tracks. Now they disappear. Sometimes I want to highlight them a little bit. Say, wait a minute, I'm telling the truth. I really did that. But it's in the conversation. It's in the sharing of the life experience. And it's in sharing in the success story. Because I'm a success story too. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I never look back. And I had a rough time when my back messed up and I had to take opiates. At one time, I was taking 80 milligram patches of fentanyl every 3 days on my back. And that stuff had me so crazy. that we lived in we had a large house then. My wife would have to come look for me 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd be standing in the house somewhere, just standing there, like the attendant from the Wizard of Oz. That stuff just throws me out. So I do know what fentanyl could do to you, you know, but I thank God that when I got in church, I was at a point where I was ready. I was ready for God. I was ready for God. And when I was ready for God, God sure enough was ready for me. And that's what's kept me, is that every time I talk to somebody in a homeless shelter, every time I talk to guys on the street, every time somebody asks me for a couple of dollars, I always try to see where they're coming from. And at least let them know. And such, like the Bible saying, such with some of you, I was just like that. I was just like you were. But let me tell you how I got help. That's my testimony.
Amen.
I definitely appreciate both of you for, one, your candidness. This is not an easy conversation. This is not a conversation that our community has often. But I think it's just so necessary for people like me to be able to see that recovery is possible, to be able to see that, yeah, relapse may be a part of your recovery, but it does not have to be the end of you. One of the things that I definitely realized is I literally found God in the middle of an AA meeting. My sister took me. She had enough of me just spiraling out, and we went together, and I literally felt like I was ready. Yeah, and I literally could feel the presence of God more so than I ever have in the church or anything. And so I just want people who are watching to be clear that everybody's journey is different, but we all are in this together. It's different, but it's the same. We might not have had the same specific experience, but the process is all the same. We all just want to be clean. We all just want to be healthy. We want to be whole, and we want to be everything that God intended for us to be. So I'm absolutely grateful for this. This will not be the end of this conversation, but I appreciate you guys just being completely open and honest about your process. And I'm so grateful for both of your recoveries, because both of you have definitely made a major impact in my life. Ms. Beverly, you've known me since I was knee high to a grass apple. My grandmother would say. Me and Bree got baptized together back in 1996. 97. So you have literally watched me. I've watched you at a distance handle life with so much grace, with so much strength. And I've always seen you just fall back on God, like regardless of what the situation, regardless of what happened, like your life has been a complete testimony for me and just been a complete blessing. And you my man, 50 grand. You've definitely challenged me to be more authentic, to be more intentional about just finding God for myself, reading the Bible for the Bible, and not necessarily any self-help book. But just going straight throttle. So I appreciate both of you for this. And we are done. If you could just take one more minute and just say something goodbye to the people, anything that you have to say, and then we'll end it.
I'll say one last. And I'm speaking to those whose faces I can't see and voices I can't hear. Sometimes within that horrible nightmare of being addicted to something, you'll get all the way to the end. You've heard that, you've had the counseling, you've seen the examples from other people, you've already done these things, and you get to the end and you say, but can I really let this life go? Because I was such a terrible person. Right. I robbed people, I prostituted, I stood over somebody's baby crib one night with a 45 to get a drug dealer to give up his drugs. I've done some horrible things. Some stuff I'll never say out loud. Right. God knows, and He's forgiven me for those. But what I'm gonna say to you is, whoever you are, and whatever you're addicted to, if whatever it is, the worst thing you've done in your addiction, somebody did something worse. So let that be the last thing to say, yeah, I would, but I've been such a bad person. No, somebody did something way worse than you. And they might be on TV right now. So don't use that. Don't use that excuse. Step out on faith. If you want to live your life, live your whole life. And when you're addicted, you only live a small part of your life.
Amen.
And maybe not for long.
I want to leave somebody with this thought. Never take credit for what the Lord has done. if you are one who's going to watch this and you're going to glean from it, your root cause is either hurts, habits, or hang-up. It's you. You got to find your root cause. And generally at the top of the list is rejection of some form or another. But you have to deal with your issues, not somebody else's issues, but yours. And when you begin to get honest with you about you, when let me tell you something, that's when you take take your power back. I often tell people, I have no problem telling anybody anything about me. I'm an open book. God said those who come to him must come and worship him in spirit and in truth. He said, Beverly, keep it real. So I had to be honest with me about me, but I can be honest with me to other people. And what that does, that takes the power out the enemy's hand. And the devil don't have no power over me. He doesn't have any authority over me because I can tell the truth about me. But you must go to the Lord in prayer. You must ask him for what it is that you want. And because he is a benevolent God, he's a good God, a kind God, a charitable God, he will give you just what you ask for. But when there's that void, ask him to fill it up with his Holy Spirit. Ask him to come into your heart and save you. And he will do just that. But Jaleesa, I want to tell somebody that recovery is possible. Ain't nothing wrong with you. Just we got some issues. Get a therapist on your payroll. Get a therapist because you need somebody who's neutral that'll listen to you, be able to be who you need to be. But God already knows you. He already knew the path that we would take. But recovery is possible for anyone who chooses to do it for themselves. And if you relapse, and if you fall, get back up and try it again. And one day it will click and it will connect and you won't look back. And that's the truth. Don't beat yourself up because you relapsed. When I relapsed, I stayed out there for 18 more months in a relapse. But then when I came back, I've never looked back, and it's been 27 years, and I've not looked back. So I'm here to tell you, I'm a witness for the Lord when it comes to recovery. Recovery is possible. God bless you, Elder. Thank you so much. You know I love you, girl. And
love you too. I appreciate both of you guys.
My goodness, when you called me, I was humbled. I really was humbled by that.
Aww.
And so I thank you so very much from the depths of my heart. I do.
No problem. Well, we're going to say goodbye to our viewers and waving all